Welcome to the Vanita. Good to see you again. How are you? Nice to see you.
I'm doing
How's school
fine,
going? Are
thank
you out of
you.
school soon?
We actually are. Mountain Vista ended already. We have to start before the earliest school division. We have 7 different districts that feed in, and Culpeper starts very early. So like back at school will be August 3rd, but we're out.
Well, good. Have a nice break. Well deserved. Well, welcome everybody to the May Fauquier Forward virtual town hall. We have a really interesting format today. Jay Hero, I think most of y'all know Jay Hero. Jay has been working very hard since January. Jay, I know you've been digging into numbers, and guys, it's all about tracking the numbers. So I think it's going to be very enlightening for everybody. As we go through this, Jay, I think his presentation is going to be 30 minutes long, roughly. Please put your comments in the chat. We're going to leave time for questions at the end, or as we go along, Jay, if you're okay, if you see something, I might even
Yeah.
let you know that. So, everybody enjoy. Questions in the chat. We're gonna have people kind of let me know that they're there. So we want everybody's voices to be heard, but sit back, enjoy, and I'm gonna turn it over now to Jay Hero again. Jay, thank you for everything.
You
Appreciate
bet.
you.
Yeah. All right. Well, good afternoon or good evening, everybody. It's nice to see everybody again, some familiar faces. I'm going to turn off my video if that's okay, because I don't want to hog up some bandwidth here. And then I'm going to share my screen. And if you all could let me know when you see it.
Okay, so I got some feedback here.
Here we go.
Okay. And I'm going to go full screen here. Okay. Everybody see my screen? Okay.
Yep. See it.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, thanks, Vance, and thanks for the opportunity. This presentation, folks, is really kind of designed to give us some overview of this place we call Fauquier and a land that we have that makes it up. There was a lot of information here, and it came from all public available sources. There may be some inconsistencies in the data. It is not perfect, and so I welcome any feedback and any corrections. It's a what you'll find, at least I found, is this is very nuanced data. There's an ordinance here or a rule here or a piece of information here. Sometimes they line up really well, sometimes they don't. Not saying this is perfect in any way, shape, or form. I'll post this information when I'm done. I'll put the PDF out there. You can all look at it. I won't get into this, but this is just sort of my disclosure here. Let me see if I can okay that. How do I get that to go away? Just move that down. Well, we'll just keep it there. There we go. I'll post this. Just folks, I'm doing this as a private citizen. I have not been paid for any of this information. I am not petitioning the county or the town or anybody for any zoning or approvals of anything. I do sit on, I was appointed by the town council to advise Warrenton Town Council on zoning changes. That is a purely advisory role. I have no approval authority. I am not a land use zoning expert. I am not a land use attorney. I'm just a citizen who's been taking an interest. Obviously, I've lived here for 33 years to see ours succeed. I am a public employee. I'm a federal government employee. I work for the Department of Air Force, and my financial disclosure is approved by the Air Force General Counsel. All right, here we are. This is us. We are right up there in the upper right-hand corner. We are a big county, folks, 651 square miles. We're the 8th largest in Virginia, about 416,000 acres. We're one of 95 counties that are in the state. We've got a population, you see there, about 75,000. And when you break this down a little bit, again, this is where some of the numbers may be a little inconsistent. But we know for a fact that we've got about 118,000 acres in conservation easement by the Virginia Outdoor Foundation. We divide this land at about 34,000 parcels or so, about 28,000 housing units. We've got a lot of farm acreage, actually the 4th largest in the state of Virginia. And I'll get into this a little bit later. We talk about it, we have zoning districts. We organize our land very well, right, in terms of what we can and cannot do here. And then we have what we call the service districts. And these are service areas or areas of the county that are designed to be dense. And it's where you find our stores and our retail and more and dense housing, hospitals, et cetera. So that's us at sort of a nutshell, right? How do we compare to other counties? Again, we're the 8th largest. You can see here at the top, there's some big dogs here, right? In this top four, okay? And we're sort of in this next group here. I didn't realize Bedford was so big, but here we are in the next group, and then there's sort of this next tier down. So we're a close second here, but you see some big ones. So being in the top 10 of 95 counties in the state is clearly impressive. We are a big place. So a little closer to home, how do we compare to our neighbors? So if we look to the east, Loudoun County and Prince William County, Loudoun County is a big place, almost as big as us. But the difference that you see in both Prince William and Loudoun is density, okay? We have a density of about 116 people per square mile, and Loudoun has about 819, and Prince William packing them in at 1,420 people per square mile. They both Loudoun and Prince William, you see them, they're the second or fourth most populous county in the state of Virginia. Interesting, probably a little close, sort of tied to Loudoun. They've got about 85,000 acres in conservation easement in Loudoun County. Western Loudoun County has traditionally been farming. To our western neighbors, Culpeper, Rappahannock, Warren County, not as big as us, but we have a little more in common with them, and that's in the density. We look a lot more like them. Culpeper being at 146 people, Rappahannock, very rural, right? 28 people per square mile, very small county. But beautiful county out there in Rappahannock. And then Warren County, about 194. So to the west, we're a little bit more people size like them. We're bigger than them. And to the east, our neighbors are a lot more dense, a lot more population in those areas. And speaking of population, and I know this is on a lot of people's mind because I hear this, you hear this, is the concern that we're going to look like Prince William or Loudoun County. So I ran the numbers and said, well, like what would that take? And if you look at the historical growth rate of Fauquier County at about 0.75% a year to match Loudoun County in its current state, it would take us about 240 years to equal that. Prince William about 252. If we went at our best rate of 2% a year, maybe around 90 years or so. And if we went to the 5% a year boom of Loudoun County, where they grew for about 10-year period, about 5%, it would take us about 40 years to do that. So, these are sort of interesting facts of like, okay, you can have we're going to look like them, but when you actually do the math, it would actually take some time to do that. But it is a concern that's on people's minds. So you're going to see as I go through the presentation here some recommendations, and I think it's a fair ask to require of the Board of Supervisors each year to give a population forecast based on any kind of assumptions that they may have that work into their planning and disclose that so we can really see from a sort of a trusted source of what is our population projection looking like. Okay, a little bit more about Fauquier here. We generally divide our county into districts. Magisterial districts, which tend to be on the electoral side. That's probably one of the maps we're most familiar with. I mentioned the service districts, and then we have these agricultural and forestal districts as well. On the magisterial district side, again, you see that map on the left. We're all pretty familiar with that one. We see that a lot. It tells us where to go vote and things like that. We elect our representatives in the county supervisors in those districts. And what's interesting is you can see, size-wise, Marshall clearly dominates, then Cedar Run, and then it kind of tails off. But in terms of the residents and housing units, I found this really fascinating that we're pretty even across the districts. But then you start to see, again, the density issue, right? Very rural in Marshall, same thing down in Cedar. And then as we move up, right, starts to go, and of course, center districts, Carter knows this, is the most dense. It is the economic engine in a lot of ways to Fauquier. So we're pretty spread out wise in terms of residents and housing, but the density is where, in the magisterial district view, we certainly separate. This is an eye chart, but kind of shows you from that agricultural forestal district, the total acreage, the total parcels, and where it is. These districts are spread throughout the county. And most of it is in that 50 to 100 acre range. So these are big parcels. And then in the service district, there's a lot in the service districts to discover. I kind of took a view here of, well, what do we do in the service districts? And you can see that in some areas in the blue, especially like Bealton and Warrenton and New Baltimore, very committed to housing. And then you can see in other areas with shops and offices and industry, Midland and Opal and Remington, set up for that industrial commercial type of setting. And then we've all got a little bit of schools because we obviously in civic responsibilities and civic services that we've spread across the service districts. I think here in Warrenton, I think what do we have? 3, 4, 5 schools, with the high school, a couple middle schools, elementary schools. So that's where you'll see a little bit more of the gray, obviously in Warrenton. But you can see a spread here, from mixed use, to housing, and again these service districts all designed to be dense, so the rest of the county can be remote. This concept of service districts came into being probably I think in the 1960s, and has been executed fairly well here in the county. Okay, so how do we organize this land? Don't want to put you all to sleep with zoning discussion, but just kind of give you an overview of like, how do we set it up? And when you read our zoning ordinance, you'll see that we've kind of set these structures up with rural, residential, commercial zones, industrial zones, planned development. And in each one of those zones, you can do something different. So sometimes you might be driving along the road and you'll see, for sale, RR2 or C1, right? And those all mean something in terms of what can be done in those particular zoning districts or areas, if you will. Here's a little more detail, okay? A little more driven of like what can be done in there. We have rural agricultural, we have conservation, we have places that's rural, but you can build houses. You see the types of density that can be built in a residential zoned area, the types of commercial structures, business, and planned development. So each one of these is described in the zoning ordinance in Article 3 of our zoning ordinances. I'm not going to go through each box here, but just kind of gives you another view. In the service districts, there's a lot more classification land use types that happen. So we've sort of sliced and diced the county up pretty good in terms of what you can and cannot do. And these are well published for both developers and business owners and residents to know what is allowable on the land that they have. When you sort of merge it all up, and again, this was an estimate based on some GIS data as well as some other sources. But basically, we've got about that 86,000 that fall into that rural ag and about 294 in conservation. Some may be in both, but the general sense that about 90% of the county is in one of these two buckets. And then you see over here with our mixed use and our residential areas, and then you see down here that really less than 1% of the land in Fauquier County is dedicated to commercial or industrial use. As we move along, what can we do on these lands? I showed you kind of the districts, but when you break down Article 3, there's a lot of detail in there about what we can do with residential. We have land that's used for public or utility functions. There's a land resource function or use case, commercial, some civic. This is again when you see schools, recreation, parks, industrial, right? Light manufacturing, data centers, shipping and warehousing, right? Those are all uses that are defined by either special permits or by right. All that's documented in Article 3 of our zoning ordinances. Okay, so now we know about the land. Let's talk about some of the common uses. I want to start with housing. Fauquier has something very unique in terms of what's called a sliding scale. So within the rural ag and the rural conservation land, this went into effect several years ago, decades ago, I think, around for land that's zoned this way, how many lots can you put on it? And you can see as it's smaller to how it gets larger, how we can put the number of lots on this sliding scale. Okay. As it gets over 205 lots, there's an additional lot per every 50 acres. This is sort of intentional to make sure that rural and rural conservation land allows for something to be done, but also keeps the rural nature of that land. And then just an illustration. So if you had a small farm, let's say in that 20 to 34 acre land, that's about 15 to 19 football fields. You buy the sliding scale, 3 houses. A little bit bigger, 35 to 50 acre, 4 houses, 205, that 100 houses and 100 houses. And you'll see there's this consistent theme of this 85% making sure it stays open and it's applicable to the rural and rural conservation, rural ag and rural conservation land. Any questions so far, Vance?
So far, no questions, Jay.
Okay. Um, this is a hypothetical. How many homes do we think can be built? And I think this is another one where I think an ask of the Board of Supervisors. This is on everybody's mind. Like, how much could be built if a farmer sells that land or somebody wants to convert it? And this is a model. Okay, this is not an official estimate. I modeled this out based on the sliding scale. And you see here some a hypothetical. If we just blew away all the zoning and we somehow got rid of all the easements and all this kind of no limits anymore, yeah, that's 375,000 homes. That's probably not going to happen. A theoretical where maybe there's some changes. We actually some of the estimates there, but we maybe maximize out housing in those allowable sliding scales. 15,000 more likely is 8,000. So we're somewhere probably between these two. And again, a suggestion here, I think, is to ask the Board of Supervisors that every year they should disclose to the citizens and the taxpayers its annual count of what we have for existing houses and what is the forecast of what capacity could potentially be turned into housing. And I think this is really important for us to get some good facts on this because sometimes we get a lot of scare tactics around this thing, and that ignores the protections and the controls that are in place. So something I think that's easy for them to give an estimate and give some folks some good data to work with in terms of planning. Okay, let's talk about agriculture. We refer to ourselves often as a agricultural community, and that's true. We grow crops. We have horses and cows and all sorts of livestock. This slide I got from the USDA Ag Census, which is out of the USDA. They do an annual or a census every few years, and this one's in 2022, so it is a bit dated. This information I found very concerning because if in fact we're losing farms, we're losing farmland, but if we're like the fourth largest in land acreage for farming, but yet we only account for 1% of total agriculture sales in Virginia. And it appears that non-cash farm income is negative. So we're not making money. I don't know what this means, and I don't know if that means our farmers are struggling. But these numbers display a problem for me, and maybe I'm not reading it right. So again, another action I think to our supervisors is let's get a better picture of what is the agricultural industry in Fauquier County, and does it need some assistance? Is there things that we as citizens can do to help this industry? What is the true picture here? And what do we need to do to better compete? Because some of these numbers don't seem very good. A little more data on who's farming. We've got about 1,900 producers or so. You see the demographics in terms of weight, race, and ethnicity. A lot are family farms. Good news here, they have internet access. So farming, if you study farming today, it's becoming highly automated. Certainly artificial intelligence is helping the farming industry significantly. You see some of the tractors that John Deere is putting out. It's just unbelievable the technology that's on them today. So another concerning point here is you can see that almost 40% of our farmers are over the age of 65. So we have an industry here that's getting older. It's family owned and it doesn't seem to be making money. So my recommendation is I think we need to dig into that a little bit more, or perhaps explain it. I may be missing something, which again, as I said earlier, could be entirely possible. What do we do on these farms? A lot of hay, and that again goes to the horses and the cattle and the other livestock. We do a lot of soybeans. That was really revealing. I didn't realize that, but that's a big crop for us here in Fauquier, and you see some of the other products here. And then a lot of cattle and cows. We are number one in equine scenes. I don't think that's any surprise to anyone. Fauquier has always been rather known for that in terms of horse and equine, the industry and sales. But a lot of cattle here as well, and you see some other livestock as well. Again, this is another point to agriculture. When you look at the farm data from the census, you can see the size of them. A lot of them are under 49 acres or under 200 acres. So almost 80% is in this range. But again, the concerning factor here is these farms are making less than $10,000 in annual sales. So that is a concern because as I'm going to show you earlier or later on, for these farms, a lot of them are in land use. Okay, they're not taxed or assessed at fair market value. They're assessed in land use, and that results to about a $1.626 billion annual subsidy. So if that's available and we're still not making, it's low income. What is wrong here? Is there something wrong here with the viability of our agricultural industry here in Fauquier? All right, so let's talk a little bit more about our commercial and industrial land. Again, trying to refresh ourselves, we've got 651 square miles, eighth largest, 416,000 acres. What of that is designed for commercial and industrial? And as you can see, for commercial and industrial land, it's less than 1%. So you see the total acreage there. The total assessed value of all the property in Fauquier County, and thank you to Commissioner of Revenue's office, Eric Maybach, gave me a really good spreadsheet on that, is $21 billion. Our commercial and industrial combined assessed value is 1.2. Which means only about 5.18% of our total assessed value actually comes from commercial and industrial. That is a rather low number for certainly a county our size. In commercial industrial, you can see some of the uses here, for neighborhood use or a highway use, a shopping center, village, but all these things that you see here, these are uses that are allowable in these types of zoned areas, and they're often done either by right, a special permit, a special exemption, some sort of administrative permit. So there is a process that has to be followed in order to put these types of operations into these zoned lands. And again, same thing for industrial. Okay, so you can see in business park, the types of uses that are allowed here. And then in industrial, warehousing, some light manufacturing, truck stops, electrical generation plants. And then general industrial tends to be, again, with the warehousing, bulk storage, motor freight terminals. So this is mining, okay, that accounts for a lot of, I think, Vulcan and some of our business partners in the county there. So this is what's allowed in these areas. That again, it only accounts for, what do we say up here? About 1,900 acres that could be used to support these types of operations. According to our economic development agencies, this is right out of there, the FaukierBusiness.com. We have a lot going for us out here. We are only 45 minutes southwest of DC. We've got good rail access. We have obviously an airport. We have good rail access. We're close to the data center market corridor, so the tech industry is very viable here. And then you see some of the development sites that are ready to go now. This one here, I think the ask is that to our supervisors to disclose to the citizens and taxpayers annually how much of our commercial industrial zone land is actually being used, how much is vacant, what's the total assessed value? Because again, I think that type of information is important for us to understand so we know, are we getting the most out of this land? Is there opportunity to use it more? Are we maxing out? It's a little bit difficult to, at least from my research, to understand if this corridor of land here is in fact maxed out, and is there more we can do with it? You see here, I just kind of put out the on the land, this commercial industrial land. So what are we doing? You can see in Fauquier County who our principal employers are. Again, this is Jay's opinion, and kind of a bit of a hypocrite here as a government employee, but you can see our top 3 employers are government. That is generally not, we need a little more diversity on that. And you can see that we've also got here some retail. Retail typically not high paying, and also causes some, often doesn't have great benefits. So our employer base here is highly dependent on tax revenue to provide jobs. On assessed value in terms of real property, so real estate, you see that the power companies, some of the malls, the medical centers, They really are paying pretty significantly in terms of their assessed value. And then personal property, which is equipment and so forth. You can see here, again, medical, you see Amazon and Microsoft. They are taxed today. They're at the training center. So they are contributing to their taxes as they operate here in Fauquier. We have a lot of small businesses, which is really exciting. We had a fair amount of new startups. Unemployment rate is generally, at least here from June of 2025, is not, we're not high unemployment here. But again, where are they employed? Weldon Cooper did a study a few years back that estimates that upwards of 30,000 people leave Fauquier every day to go work in Northern Virginia. I was saying earlier, I ride on a bus every day to go to the Pentagon. I'm on the bus at 5 o'clock in the morning, and there is a steady stream of cars leaving the county every morning to go work somewhere else. All right, let's talk about our protected land. And in Fauquier, we generally have two types of land that we protect. And one is in conservation easement, and the other is what we call land use deferrals. Okay, so conservation easement is when you as a landowner basically take your land and you donate it to a trust. Okay, and the Virginia Outdoor Foundation is one of those trusts, or you can do it to the county. But VOF is one of the largest, or is the largest conservation easement landholder here in Fauquier County. That land is permanently protected, meaning it cannot be developed. Okay, it is in perpetuity. It is in a conservation easement, and so what that does is that reduces the tax burden on that parcel because the land is not, it can't be developed, so its market value is declined, and that's an estimated annual impact of about $12 million. We also have land in land use deferrals. Okay, so that is temporary. That's not permanent like an easement. So a land use deferral, often used in farming. Okay, you're taxed on your land use, but you can exit that at any point in time. And if you were to do that, you owe about 5 years of taxes on that land. And it has to qualify as agricultural use. Okay, so you have to be doing some agricultural function on that. And there's a large tax base in that assessed value. That's where this $1.26 billion comes from of deferred value. So we're not taxing $1.26 billion each year because it's in land use deferral. Some quick numbers again, conservation easement. That number here, the 118,576, that's what's in Virginia Outdoor Foundation. I'll show you another slide that looks at GIS data. Again, you can see that the taxable value here is about 1.45 billion. We're deferring this number here because the land is not taxed. On land use, again, we've got a lot of enrolled in it. The fair market value of that land is 1.8. We tax the buildings on it. It's a $3 billion market value of that land, but then we defer a bunch of it to bring the tax bill of that land down. It's traditionally been there to help farmers, so they're farming the land, whether that's the land or they've got cattle, so it's easing the tax burden on them. But again, I go back to my slide earlier. We have a $1.26 billion deferral, but our farming economy actually thriving? I think that needs to be looked at a little bit harder. In terms of easements, again, a little more data here. This is actually based on GIS data. GIS data gives you the spatial view. So it looks at the whole property, whereas an assessment data looks at the deed, legally what is in the process. That's where you see this little difference here on the 118. So again, this data came from GIS download. You can see that the Virginia Open Space, that VOF Foundation, really owns the majority of the conservation easement land, and you can see the average size here. Okay, they're generally pretty good sized properties. Okay, that we're talking about here. You know, that 10 acre to 50 acre to a 250 acre area, but the 50 to 100 is the most common when it comes to conservation easements.
Because it allows fire.
I'm gonna open mic if someone wants to close their mic, please. Thank you. Again, a little more same data. You can see it just broke it down a little bit. We also have PDR which is basically where the county, we pay some of those taxes to basically buy land to keep it permanently in a farming agricultural use. So this is we've got about 21,000 acres protected like this, and I believe most of the PDR land is actually in the southern part of the county, but don't hold me on that. The challenge I see here is we've got a lot of land in conservation or land use. We have a $1.286 billion assessed value that's deferred from the tax rolls, and that means it's shielded from the full market rate taxation, which means that to make up for that, that tax burden gets shifted to more to the residents and the business owners. This puts us a little bit of a financial concentration on a group of people. So I think this is an area that certainly we all need to look at, and I think that the supervisors need to look at as well. All right, let's talk about assessments. So assessments is basically, what is your land worth? I won't get into all the nitty-gritty details here of numbers, but the bottom line is when you look at that all residential and rural ag and rural conservation, the majority of our assessed value is coming from the rural and the residential. You can see here that our industrial is only assessed about $238 million and about $1 billion in commercial. So again, a lot of the funding and the responsibility for funding the services are coming from this side of the house, not so much the commercial and industrial side of the house. This just kind of shows you, again, the balance, like how much of the land area, how much of the assessed value. Rural ag, 20% of the land accounts for 40% of the value. Residential, 5% of the land carries 30% of the value. Rural conservation, 69% of the land carries only 5% of the assessed value. So these types of ratios, if you will, show you where, from a land use perspective, percentage of the county land versus assessed value, we have some big gaps here that probably need to be looked at a little bit more. Or again, going back to what I said earlier, in these other zones, are they optimized? Are we using them to the greatest extent possible, such that maybe they could kick up a little bit more, provide more funding to the county for schools and for roads and for public services, maybe make a little bit more of a contribution to ease some of the burdens that are up here. Where does the money go? So I talked about assessed value. Okay, assessed value translates into a tax bill that we all get a couple times a year. And this should be no surprise to everyone that the majority of our tax revenue goes into our schools. So we spend about, I think this is based on the 26 budget, about $106 million a year on that. And so that's a big cost, followed by public safety and then general government. But you see, there's a huge gap here. So where does it come from? The majority is coming from general property taxes. So that is, and a lot of that is in fact from the residential side. We do get state revenue. We have some other local taxes like B-Poll and cigarette tax and those types of things. But the bulk of where it comes from is in fact coming from those property taxes, of which a majority of that is coming from the residential side. Okay, this is an interesting slide here and piece of information. There's something called a cost of community services, a COCS or Cox study that's done. And Weldon Cooper down at UVA, that center did one in 2015. And basically what this does is sort of a industry, I guess, public sector sort of standard that tells you, look, for every dollar you spend, does it cost you money to provide a service to an area or a capability, or do you sort of make money? You're left with a surplus. And you can see here that in residential, and this is not unique to Fauquier. This is a pretty common thing across most counties, that for every dollar you collect, you spend about $1.17 serving the community in residential. And why is that? Because they need roads, they need schools, they need sewers, they need pools and rec centers and basketball courts and things like that. So generally residential is costing money, which is why you have to offset it with other revenue streams to account for that deficit. Farmland here in Fauquier County it gives a surplus. So for every $1 you collect, you have 78 cents a surplus of 78 cents. So it's costing 22 cents, and commercial industrial 26 cents. So both these land uses, that rural ag, that rural conservation, the commercial industrial, are good for us because they don't cost money. There's not a lot of service. It generates a surplus that obviously we can use for other purposes. This last study was down in 2015. Okay, so we all know that a significant amount of the world and the economy has changed in 10 years. The cost of living has gone up significantly. The role of government, our demographics, certainly what we think is happening or don't know what's happening in the farm community here. So the action here is really a suggestion to authorize the county to do an updated cost of community services study, so we can look at these numbers and see, are they still relevant? Have they gone up? Have they gone down? Because this is an important factor when you're looking at land use and what does it cost us? I mean, look, we need residents, we need community, so we need people, right? But how can we make that number, trim away at the deficit a little bit? And if farmland and commercial is giving us a surplus, are we utilizing that land appropriately? Can we maybe get a few more dollars or a few more cents out of that land to contribute to what we're trying to the lifestyle that we're trying to live here in Fauquier? This is a hypothetical scenario. Okay, this is a, don't take this as gospel or whatever, but it's just a scenario that I ran and said, well, so what if we did some slight changes to our land use? What would that do to the average tax bill? And so, one is, hey, if we had one large industrial type of high-tech facility or manufacturing facility or whatever you want to call it, what would that do in terms of tax revenue? Well, maybe it'd give us, $8 to $12 million a year. And that could reduce someone's tax bill, by maybe $230 a year. If we looked at our land use deferral and said, well, of all the land that's actually claiming to be land use, maybe some of it actually, isn't it's a hobby farm, or it really isn't an agricultural use. And so there's a change to that. And so that land use deferral maybe isn't as applicable to as large a base, and maybe they're taxed at fair market value because it is not a farming operation. Well, then that could give us a little more tax revenue. If we were to look at our commercial and get better commercial type of operations, whether that's a better restaurant or a better retail or any of those uses I showed before.
It's the Fauquier Townhall I'm listening to.
Why?
I'm sorry. That 20%, that could give us another $3 million. And then that existing commercial industrial zone land, if it's underutilized, what else could we do there? Those aren't necessarily, very hard decisions to make, but we could be potentially looking, at each year, maybe another $15 to $20 million. And that could result in potentially a $400 to $550 a year savings to the citizen. Now, in full disclosure, you do some of this stuff, that means there may be some expense too. Maybe you have to put in, some sewer, or maybe there's an expense that has to go. So maybe this number goes down a little bit. That has to be factored in, which again is why I think that community service cost of community service is important. But there is an opportunity here with some tweaking, with some very precision things to potentially get some more revenue into the town or into the county that will, for capital improvement, or drop our tax bills down for any of those critical investments that we know we need to make in schools and infrastructure and public services. So again, just kind of beating the drum here. I think that that updated cost of community services study would really be useful. And then I think the county asking them to give us some scenarios on growth and revenues and land use tax base, because otherwise, if we don't have information we can trust, then fear and fake promises just really fill the vacuum. And I think, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of that in the past few years. So there are things that, from a planning perspective, certainly our county government can do and disclose to the citizens, and we as citizens can get involved with to see what slight changes in land use can do that would benefit all of us here in the county.
Hey, Jay,
all right. Yeah.
Question here. Joe Saffer, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Joe, asked the question of how much of the open space, how much of the open space easements are not being used as farmland? So how much of the open space easements right now are not being used as farmland? Do you know
Yeah,
that or have an idea?
meeting.
Yeah, so Joe, that's a great question, and I don't know that, and I think that is I think it's a legitimate question to ask the county. I will say, as I understand it, and again, I could be wrong, folks. I don't want you to take this. Jay said this. I could be wrong, but I believe there are some barriers to legal barriers to actually that disclosure. But it is a legitimate question that if we have land that is stating to be a farm use and is receiving a subsidy, but really isn't in an true agricultural use. I think in the spirit of transparency, which we all seem to want, that seems like a legitimate question. I haven't come across it, but I think it's a reasonable ask. I would just caution. I think there is some barriers to that. Um, Not a great answer, but I hope that that helps a little bit. Okay, we good, Vance?
Thank you, Jay. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Last but not least here, how am I doing on time? Doing pretty good. Conclusions. Uh, I do think going to back, I think where Joe was talking about is I think it's reasonable to ask the supervisors to have an annual public disclosure on which land is using deferral parcels and which ones are farmed, or which ones may be idle. We're talking about a decent amount of money here that's off the tax roll. And I just think that it's reasonable ask that the citizens understand what is being used in its agriculture use and which isn't. Um, this economic impact study, I think understanding like what is the true financial health of our farming industry. We say we're an agricultural community. The numbers don't seem to support that a little bit. So is that industry do we need to do more to make it viable for our community? And I think this includes that asking for an updated cost of community services study. Again, I mentioned earlier, I think it's a reasonable ask to publish an annual housing capacity and population growth estimate. We cannot continue to operate with fear tactics. We're going to be Loudoun County before we know it. The math just doesn't support that. But having an authoritative source say, look, based on what we know what our zoning TID is, based on what we know what our build out is, this is what we believe our forecast is. I think that's a reasonable ask. Same thing for commercial. How much of it is occupied? How much of it is vacant? How much does it generate for the county? What's the lost opportunity that it's not optimized? Or you know what? We're about where we're maxed out as best we can be. My suspicion is we're not. But what is that? And then from a citizens advisory group, we've got to figure out a way, and I think this forum's been very good at that, to kind of build this vision of where we're trying to go, and based on some hard data that can help us really plan better with a lot more precision, as opposed to some quite frankly, just not trying to be rude, but some fear factor where I think has taken over a lot of the planning. Final thoughts. The regional economy that we live in here, I mean, we are part of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan statistical area, but it's shifting under our feet. Federal government employment is at its lowest since 1966. About 330,000 people lost their job since March of 2025. Being in government, I can tell you that the government contracting industry is next. Technology and the size is going to impact the work base. So we historically have been protected from that, but any kind of economic shocks. But I don't think that's a safe thing to depend on. I mentioned earlier, I think our farm economy needs a real honest attention. If less than $10,000 sales annually, and we're less than 1% of Virginia sales, we need a serious answer there. We call ourselves agriculture. We have 30,000 people leaving the county every day. We're not generating a lot of revenue. What's happening in this agriculture area that we need to know about and perhaps help? We all agree that conservation easement and conservation in general, and I'm not even picking on easements, has done some really, really great things for Fauquier. The question becomes, are we all benefiting from that? Are there things that we can do for more trail access or local food infrastructure or agritourism? Can we all benefit from that a little bit more? I think that's worthy of a conversation. Number four, given the changes that are happening, certainly in the nature of work with technology and just the world in general, I think it's safe to assume that our children may be sticking around locally more than perhaps in the future, that or in the past, that moving away may be harder to do. They're going to need a place if they're here to live and to work. And every dollar matters. If we're in fact losing 30,000 people a day going to other places, they are spending money in Gainesville or Culpeper or Fairfax or Arlington, and that money goes away permanently. It never comes back. So targeting our growth in the commercial area with the right type of services here, it's a path to fiscal self-sufficiency. That we're not contributing to the well-being of other communities. No, nothing against the other communities, but we have to look after ourselves as well. So these are just some final thoughts. I'd conclude that the world is changing, right? The assumptions that have driven a lot of our planning for the past 60 years, a lot of that is changing right under our feet. Last thing I'll say is, these types of changes. They're hard. Ronald Reagan had a great saying. It said, "All great change in America begins at the dinner table." And these are personal things that we need to talk about because we live in this community. We love this community. We love it for its conservation. We love it for its community. We love it for its size. And this forum and others has to continue. Otherwise, my fear is we're going to find ourselves in some sort of a fiscal crisis. And planning during a crisis never works out well. We find out, especially in public use, all right, in public planning, public government, local government, you find yourself boxed into corners, making decisions that you wouldn't have made if you had planned better. The Midwest is filled with this type of situation, with the Rust Belt and so forth. So I hope this was helpful. I'm gonna stop talking. Welcome discussion. I'll post this in the chat. And again, I'm sure there are errors in here. Welcome critique, welcome clarification, and welcome to work with anybody on who may want to continue to kind of explore this a little bit more. So thanks for your time. I hope I didn't get too long-winded, but I really appreciate the opportunity, Vance and folks, to talk to you all tonight.
Jay, that was phenomenal. The amount of research and time that went into that. Thank you so much. And so I'm sure we have some people on here. We have quite a bit in the chat. Let's open it up to questions for Jay or just conversation. So who would like to, any thoughts, questions, comments? Anybody? Well,
That was very educational, I'll have to say.
Okay,
That
Vanita,
was,
okay, yeah.
I just wanted to say, just from an educator standpoint, that was an impressive presentation with all of that data. I appreciated seeing it. Thank you, Jay.
No, appreciate it. Look, it was fun. I really enjoy it. Like I said earlier, ma'am, I'm a nerd. I really enjoy this stuff. But I think it's really important for us as citizens. This is a great place to be. If we want to keep it that way, we have a responsibility to know the data, to know the facts. And that's really important because if we don't know that, we find ourselves going down rabbit holes that I think could ultimately be very detrimental.
Tracy, you got a question?
Yeah, Jay, phenomenal. That was incredible. I just wanted to say that your suggestion about having the Board of Supervisors produce reports annually, so that we can get a consistent source of truth regarding these issues will be key to changing the dynamic in this county.
Yeah.
And I would love it if the board actually saw this presentation.
We've got someone on here right now giving us a thumbs up.
There's Ike. Yeah. Hi, Ike.
Supervisor Broadus is on here. Good to see you, Ike.
That is nice to be here. And I'd say, Tracy, I agree with you. Love for my colleagues to see this. Jay, I thought you did a great job. 99% of what you said, I was nodding my head yes all the way along. There are a couple of things that I would interpret slightly differently, but I think that generally your data is solid. And I couldn't take notes fast enough. I'd love to sit down with you later on and remember all the things you said we should ask the board for this, because I think most of it is pretty available with minimal effort to get some updated answers. So no, I enjoyed the presentation and thought you did a great job, and I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. I agree with you, Ike. I don't think the asks are hard. I think you have the data. But I think really broadcasting would be cool. Cool, it'd be cool, but I think it would really help. The other thing that I do want to say for the record is that there is a side of the argument, and I don't even know if it's an argument. I think it's a valid point that with conservation has come we don't have the cost growth issues. It has helped in that area. So there is a benefit to that. Okay. And that's the equal balance that I think we're trying to reach. So but no, happy to sit down with you, Ike, for sure.
And I would add one thing with respect to that issue, that and the Board of Supervisors will take no credit in this whatsoever, because it was entirely Eric Maybach who saw the situation, dug into the code, the state code, and realized that he had the power to make some changes to how things are assessed. So effective this year, he started assessing open space, or things that are in the past. You could get into land use you could do it by farming, you could do it by forestry, or you could do it by being in under easement. And he said, well, that's not fair. And he started assessing those that are under easement, if they aren't valid farmers, or have a land use plan that's largely agricultural, or leasing their land to an active farmer, then they get assessed at I forget the exact number, but it's something like 4 or 5 times what an open space, what a farm would be assessed at. What we're very anxious to see is what is the impact on people's behavior. What we kind of suspect will happen is that a large number of those farmers, landowners, will very quickly upgrade from mowing their lawn to maybe haying once or twice a year, and that qualifies them to be a farm. So I'm not anticipating a windfall of revenue, but I think it's a step that brings an awareness to folks that if we want to be productive, farming is certainly one way. And on the chat, Carter and I were having a little bit of a conversation about it. I've had several constituents who have reached out and said, hey, I put my land in easement because I want to provide benefits, and the benefits I provide under easement, I don't put down pesticides, I don't put down herbicides, I allow the wild things to grow, and that wilderness provides biodiversity, it provides clean water, it provides clean air, it provides view sheds, and all those things have there are economists out there that can measure the actual economic value of those things. And I agree with
Rose up, Ike.
We're getting a thunderstorm here, so it could be that
yeah, we just had a power blip for a second here in Warrenton.
While we're waiting for Ike to come back, Carter, you've got a question.
No, I'm just saying, I think the problem that we have found over the decades is that if we get into this discussion as a zero-sum game, and that discussion about one means shutting down the other, that is the fundamental problem. I think, as Ike is pointing out, none of us will disagree with the benefits that come from agricultural support. Land use, he talks about the environmental benefits, and that's assuming that all of them are taking those environmental benefits as well. But the question is, we're not taking into the downstream equity impacts. And so, yes, we know that land use does not put kids in schools, does not cost services. And so I have no problem with rewarding that. The question is, if those lands are taken off and we're restricting what we are able to, and Jay's slideshow was phenomenal in pointing out that less 1% of our land is available for industrial or commercial growth. that's just putting us in a residential growth cycle that we can't sustain. So
Yeah.
it's not about so much condemning conservation. It's not about condemning land use. It's about finding ways to make it more equitable so that the outcome is beneficial to all. We are all supporting, the benefits of land use, benefits of people putting their land into, I said again, this is assuming that they are all making those organic environmental impacts that Ike is saying. It's just about creating the balance, and the two are not mutually exclusive. We've got to be able to have these discussions to say we are for these things. I was thrilled to hear that Eric has recommended if you're not putting it in agriculture, you're going to be assessed a little bit differently. I think that is a wonderful first step. It impacts my parents, so they're going to be pissed about it, but it just is about trying to create equity in the tax burden and making sure in terms of we look at the expense figure of what Fauquier County schools are, and we know that our schools are in need of far more infrastructure investment over the coming years. That cost is not going to come down. And so how are we, with residential growth expanding, putting pressures on that without the economic development, industrial, commercial, or whatever to support it? How are we going to support it without it coming into our pocket? So this is not a question we have to solve right now, but this is where Fauquier Forward, I think, really comes to the table with the best ability to say, we're not arguing. We just want conversation, and we want to have a better conversation that leads to better outcomes for everyone. And so, we're not denying the value of these things, but we need to understand the downstream impact. So, I want to say thank you to Jay. Some of these data statistics were absolutely enlightening. And there are things that if we lead with data-driven science, if we lead with facts, if we put emotions aside, if we put assumptions aside and look at the facts, we will have better outcomes. So all of this is to say, Fauquier Forward is and should be a contributing voice that doesn't have to be making a fight. This is not about performative outrage. This is just about finding the solutions to create a better balanced fiscal future, sustainable future for both the county and the town. So I want to thank everyone who put this forward, especially Jay, for providing this data. And let's continue this conversation.
Thank you, Carter. Ike, power went out. I think you were mid-sentence. You were saying something. You were going to finish, Ike?
The joy of living in Fauquier County out in rural areas. Yes, my power went out for a minute or two there, but I'm back for as long as Dominion will allow me to be back. So yeah, I echo what Carter just said. I think it's important we continue these conversations. There's I think, as is so often the case, there are more issues that we agree on than what we disagree on. And the more we educate one another, I think the better the decisions that we all make will be. So I appreciate you all putting this together and got a lot out of it.
Great. Thank you for being on, Ike. Appreciate it. Well, gosh, anybody else have any final words? We can stay on a minute or two if y'all like. All right. We'll be doing this
I had
again
a quick
next month,
question.
last Wednesday. Yeah, who was that? Lillian?
Oh, sorry, my name is Lillian. Yes. No, I just had
Hi,
a quick
Lillian.
question because a lot of what you
Sure.
guys shared is very interesting and informative. And is this something that you guys are going to be sharing in social media, or do you have a way of sharing this and getting maybe more eyeballs on it?
I put it in the chat, but certainly, Vance, I
Okay.
can send it to you to however you guys want to distribute it.
Yeah.
But did it show up in the chat? I hope it did.
It's in the chat. And Lillian, if you want to send an email to,
Okay.
you got however you got the link, Lillian, email
Yes.
back and we'll make sure you get a copy of this. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I already downloaded it from the chat.
Okay.
It's very informative.
Good. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll be doing this again.
If you can put it back in the chat, I'd appreciate it because
let's see,
hold on.
Mike, it's near the
I can do it
bottom
right
of
now.
the chat, right above "Oops, electricity's out"
Yeah.
from Jay, PDF. Does everybody see that? I think it's on the chat. It's the third up from the bottom. If you go to the bottom of the chat. Can y'all scroll down?
I'm punching it in there again.
Yeah, go ahead and put it in there again, Jay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because if you rejoin,
There
sometimes you
you go.
can't see the
Yeah,
previous
there you go. Does everybody
messages.
see it now? Jay, just put it back on there. Ike, do you see it?
I do not. I see Joe Saffer's post and nothing else because I lost the entire chat when my power went out.
Can you scroll? Is somebody scroll to the bottom? Let's see, because that's Joe's is this is probably about 7 or 8 below Joe's.
I think I might have got it out again. I'll email it to you, Vance, and
Yeah,
you know,
you can distribute it. We'll make sure. I believe
yeah.
everybody on here, if you register, Ike, we have your email address.
Or
Anybody that
Carter can probably
registered
say.
here, we'll make sure you get it. Any other
Ike is out
questions,
again.
Carter?
Ike is
Power's
out
out
again.
again. Okay. That was a sign. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning. Again, big thank you to Jay. Great work there. Reach out with questions, speak out, support, and everybody continue the conversation.
Okay.
And we'll see you this time next month.
All right. Thanks a lot, Vance. Great job as
Thanks,
always.
everybody.
See you.
Have a great evening.
Thanks.
See you guys, everyone.
Keep the
Thank
power
you. Good
on.
night.
Good night, everybody.